So I want to talk about these riots. So I'll list off some of these organizations. You have Antifa, No Kings, BLM, these groups called Indivisible, Move On. You have the groups involved in the Palestine stuff, the Muslim stuff, the homosexual stuff. So you have groups with that. So you have groups that show up for basically all this nonsense, and then you have groups that are kind of specified to each nonsensical topic. So BLM, Antifa, No Kings, whatever homosexual groups there are, whatever Muslim terrorist groups there are, and then the immigration criminal groups, and the groups for the crazy women that are like talking about abortion and stuff like that. So the major groups are like crazy women, homosexuals, racist blacks, just a bunch of racist minorities, Muslim terrorists, illegal immigrants, and people that profit off of them with their cartels and votes and stuff. Anyways, those are a lot of major groups. So you figure out what are the major organizations organizing these riots. Okay, where's the funding coming from? Who can I prosecute? Okay, for these acts of terrorism. How are the rioters getting paid? Okay, how are they communicating? So finding the organizing, groups, BLM, whatever it is, how are they paying these rioters? Okay, find the communication networks and the payment methods. Find out who's funding the groups, whether it's foreign businesses, foreign interests, foreign governments, domestic terrorists, cartels, gangs, criminal, wealthy people that are just making money off of being scoundrels. So figure out the payment methods, figure out the communication networks, figure out the organizations mobilizing all this stuff, and prosecute. Okay, you have to prosecute. Like, what, you think you're just going to reason with these people? No. Okay, you're going to have to use law enforcement. So actually figure out where this money's coming from. Okay, try to stop these people from getting paid. All right, try to stop these people that are funding it, by prosecuting them for crimes, suing them, arresting them, whatever it is. Okay, things have to be done like this. And I'm just saying there's a funnel, okay? And you have to recognize the funnel and take action. So it's going to take research. You're going to have to infiltrate these communication networks, gather information on these organizations, figure out who these donors are, actually gather evidence about their domestic terrorism, or if it's foreign terrorism and stuff, and try to cut off the payments, because that's what these savages, are enticed by. They're enticed by resources. Okay, they're enticed by the payments they're getting to go riot, or the support they're getting from these criminals. So I'll keep looking into this stuff, but I'm just saying it's not really all that difficult. You just have to gather information for prosecution. Okay. I recognize there's a lot of funding for these people to get lawyers, and when you're talking about trying to prosecute the rich donors, okay, they have all these lawyers, but what is a lawyer going to do when someone's blatantly breaking the law? Okay, there would have to be corruption involved. There would have to be forms of bribery and stuff. As long as you go about it properly and prosecute them the right way, so they can't claim some kind of mistrial or something. We need to do that stuff. So, starting from the bottom, starting from the rioter, okay, the way that you dismantle this stuff, obviously all the way up the chain, you could try to reason with people and try to get them to stop being crazy. But other than actually reasoning with them, okay, you could cut off the money. So you could try to, figure out information on the rioters or whatever, figure out their communication networks coming from the organizations, figure out the payment methods coming from, because they do get paid. Not every single one of them, but there are ones getting paid. Okay, so research the organizations, their communication, and the donors, So the most effective way to shut the whole thing down is to try to shut things down from the top. If you go arrest a rioter, well, you got thousands more. But if you go arrest the person funding it, they all disperse. You understand? So there's a funnel of things. You're going to have to try to prosecute the top of the funnel. You're going to try to appeal to when you're arguing with somebody, those are probably the ones that you should argue with when you're trying to appeal to logic and reason with these people. But yeah, anyways, these riots aren't just happening out of nowhere. It's not like all these people just called each other up and said, hey, let's go show up and let's make all these signs and let's get all these materials and let's have these chants ready to go and all this stuff. Let's all have these outfits. And no, it's a whole organization. It's a whole conspiracy. So recognize that. Try to take out the organizations. Try to take out their funding. Okay, try to have these riots, recognized for what they are. Okay, identify their reasonings for gathering and identify them as illegitimate. Okay, legally, they have to be legally identified as illegitimate gatherings. You understand? And they need to be dispersed. Okay? There are a lot of things that are involved here. Boycott the businesses of the donors and stuff. And the people involved. But if you figure out where the money's coming from, how this communication network works, how these payments are dispersed, where's the money coming from, if you could disrupt that would be great. If you could expose that, have the crime involved in it exposed and prosecuted, identify the motives of these groups, of these donors, of these rioters or whatever, the leaders, and, have them prosecuted for having criminal motives, intent on committing crimes and stuff like that. It's not something that's very complicated. I need help doing this stuff, but it's something that I could probably do in a few days. Gather information on the communication networks, on the payment disbursements of the donors, figure out the statements of the organization and the donors, foreign or domestic. Identify the criminality of these motives, the terrorist intent, gather evidence for prosecution. We need people to actually prosecute, all right? We need the government to step in, but as far as gathering evidence, figuring out how these payments are working, figuring out the exact positions of these organizations, what they're saying, using evidence from the riots, what are they chanting, what's being promoted here, what kind of terrorist activity, how do we find out who's actually telling them to commit the crimes and actually riot and fight, and who's inciting violence, who's talking about government takeovers and rebellion and stuff. Okay, just try to gather information on this stuff. Really try to figure out where this funding's coming from and try to have these people prosecuted. Try to stop these people from making money. Okay, you have to expose them on social media. People do, once they're educated or once they feel intimidated and stuff, they do switch sides. Okay, so we have to expose this stuff. So I talked about major groups, how to gather information and